Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today you can see we got more spoilers, and it looks like we are getting the Malphite cards, and so here they are. We've got some landmarks as well, so let's just dive straight in up here with Spiral Stairs, which is a 3-mana landmark, countdown 3, so here is where we are getting some countdown synergy for you. So let's take a look. Countdown 3, create a Seed of Strength in hand, and the Seed of Strength you can see here is a 0-mana slow speed fleeting card that grants an ally 3/2 and Overwhelm. Okay, so let's think about this. Let's take that in. So it's a 3-mana landmark that isn't really giving you that much. My first impression of this card is that it's not that good. Maybe you can make it work with some of the countdown things, but to get like a slow speed spell that's fleeting, I mean, the effect obviously is pretty nice, but the fact that it's slow speed, it's fleeting, I mean, I know it costs 0 mana, but it's important that it's fleeting because obviously if you don't have the right unit on the board, or, you know, a unit that you want to give this to, then that kind of matters. It's a countdown 3 for a 3-mana card. You know, you compare this to, let's say, Zenith Blade, right? Zenith Blade, most of the time, will draw you a card. It gives the only 1/2, I will admit, and Overwhelm. But the difference in the 2 attack there, you know, the Overwhelm is kind of the important part. It also draws you a card. It also does it straight away. This seems like a pretty horrendous card, in my opinion. So we'll quickly move on to Rockfall Path, which is a 2-mana landmark. Countdown 2, obliterate the weakest enemy. That is much better. That is a really interesting card. And when it's played, it's going to be very, very interesting to see, you know, how you and your opponent react. Because of course, you could put this down later on in the game. When do you put this down? Obviously, this is something where you might want to get rid of the countdown and have this effect come off straight away. So those earlier cards that we saw that reduce the countdown, this is the kind of thing that you might want because, you know, if the weakest enemy is something massive, of course, like say if they only got one unit and it's, you know, Lee Sin or something important, then obviously obliterating the weakest enemy is really good. And for 2-mana effect, if you can kill something that's very important, that's pretty good. That is really interesting because Targon, you know, doesn't have the most like removal. So say you play this, obviously your opponent is going to be incentivized to play, you know, weak units that they don't care if this kills them. And so if you can remove those units reliably, then, you know, then you can potentially pick something off that's pretty big, and that will help you. So this I mean, it's a solid card either way, like, right? It's a 2-mana removal that, you know, most of the time will hit at least 2-mana cards. Obviously, your opponent could have a 1-mana. It could have like a 0-mana butcher, I guess, but that's kind of neither here nor there. So it's normally gonna hit at least value, and sometimes will hit mega value. So that seems like just a very good card. So we've seen like terrible and pretty good to really good, I would say. Earth Elemental is a 4-mana 3/5. Once you've summoned 4+ landmarks this game, grant me 3/0. Ooh, that is tasty. A 4-mana 3/5 with Overwhelm, so decent stats straight away. 4-mana 3/5, decent stats. And can you summon 4 landmarks this game? I mean, you'll probably be playing Rockfall Path. The other Targon landmark is the 2-mana one. I can't remember the name, but it gives you those it gives you the invoke cards that cost 3 or less. Maybe you could play that. This seems like a pretty solid card as well. Obviously, you'll want to be playing it in landmark decks. I don't think it's probably good enough to make the cut elsewhere, but also you know, a good buff target. Just in general, you know, you think of Mentor the Stones into this, that's a pretty scary combo, right? If you're attacking on 4, that's a good target for something like Mentor the Stones. So it definitely has some, like, you know, just generically good parts to a card, and you know, we'll definitely see play in landmark decks. Maybe sees play in, you know, like a kind of Sparklefly Earth Elemental buff deck. It wouldn't shock me at all. So potentially, yeah, just a pretty good solid card. Blue Sentinel is a 2-mana 2/3. I'm yawning. Last Breath. Summon a Crest of Insight. So this is a Crest of Insight. So a 2-mana 2/3 with a Last Breath effect. Pretty decent. Crest of Insight doesn't have a mana gem. Neither does Seed of Strength, importantly. So Crest of Insight you can only get off this, or maybe other cards as well, which is a 2-mana countdown 1. Get an extra mana gem this round. Ooh. 2 mana to do that, though? It is a free card from this. So if this was a card, I would say, you know, this isn't a good card, right? You're paying 2 mana to get an extra mana gem this round. The only, like, way that is really good is if, you know, you have enough mana for, like, spell mana, and say you've got 5 mana spare and you've got nothing to do with it, then obviously you want to play Crest of Insight because it's just a free ramp for the next round, essentially. But otherwise, you are taking mana away from your spell mana, so otherwise it wouldn't really be worth it. So if this was a card, I'd say, yeah, this is another terrible card. But the fact that it comes from Blue Sentinel as a 2-mana 2/3 is perfectly fine. You know, it's a created card, I'm pretty sure. So, you know, there's some synergies there, of course. You know, for Zoe and Victor, you know, this counts as potentially 2 cards for you. And yeah, I don't know. There isn't much to say about these. It's an okay card, I guess. You know, your effect isn't great. It's a fine card. Maybe you'll play it in decks that want landmarks, or have like a very specific turn that you want to get to. You know, like I need to, like if I play Trundle on, like if you think about old Trundle and what that was, right? Like if you play Trundle on turn 4, you'll win the game, right? And play Trundle on turn 4, that even now is pretty good. But you know, back then when he was a 4/6, it was just insane. You know, if there was something like that you were like, oh, this will, you know, just increase my percent chance of winning by 1,000,000, then maybe you'll see this, right? So some interesting cards. Someone yesterday pointed out that, you know, I used to do nuts ratings for these cards, which is how nuts they are on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 obviously being like just an absolute crazy card, and 1 being, you know, something that you'll never play. And I would say like a card that you'll see played in like most decks is like a 7. A 5 would see some play. You know, you understand how 1 to 10 works. I'm sure you all do. So Spiral Stairs, honestly, it is like a 2. I don't really see how you could play this card in a deck. Rockfall Path is probably like an 8, I think. Like a really good card that you'll definitely see played. And in certain decks will just be horrific to play against. Other decks, you know, it won't be as important, and it isn't Targon, which, you know, as I say, doesn't have the removal tools necessarily, but still just a really good card that will most of the time trade at least mana for mana. You know, 2 mana for a 2-mana card, but potentially could even, you know, kill something much bigger and obliterate them as well. And it doesn't say, you know, anything about champions or it being followers. You can destroy, you know, Anivia with this, potentially, which of course is insane. So very interesting. And a very good card. Earth Elemental, kind of similar thing. You know, I'd probably give this like a 7. Just again, a solid card that you will see that in certain decks will be really good. You know, as I say, with stuff like Mentor of the Stones or just landmark decks in general, pretty solid. So yeah, just a nice card to have in a deck, to have as an option. Good keyword, good stat line to start off with. Gets better if you fulfill something. Could be a good buff target as well. Good card. Blue Sentinel, I would give like a 5.5, I think. 5. Let's say 5, I think. I'm bordering on 5 because like I'm thinking in Targon, would you play this over Mounted Goat? Like, which also creates a card for you in a slightly different way, but you know, gives you potentially multiple cards. Is it more of a threat? It's just a bit better. I just don't. It's one of those cards that I think like it's not bad, but it's not good enough. If you're playing this, it's like this is the kind of card that you'd play in other card games where you couldn't get all the cards or you'd have to pay for all the cards. this is the kind of card you'd play. That's like a solid, cheap option. But in Runeterra, you can get all of the cards pretty easily, so you don't need to play cards like Blue Sentinel. That's what I would think of this card. And so that's pretty much it. We actually only got 4 new cards, essentially. You know, we got 2 sort of created cards, and maybe, you know, these can be created in other ways. But we are hopefully going to get the excitement of Malphite tomorrow, but I am going to leave it there because there isn't much more to say, I don't think. So thank you so much for watching, and have a really nice day.